Welcome to the Desperately Seeking Self podcast, the show that helps you up your confidence game so you stop settling for less than you deserve. I'm your host, Brooke Collins, speaker, life coach, women's empowerment enthusiast, and the best friend you never knew you needed. Are you ready? Let's get started. Amanda Chen, welcome to the Desperately Seeking Self podcast. How are you?
I'm amazing. Thank you. How are you?
I am good. I am in the holiday hustle and bustle. How about you?
It's a bit different now. It's not the same hustle as it used to be, but
Yeah.
it's good that way, I think. It's like my first time of a little bit of a peaceful holiday season.
Isn't it weird, like how I was talking with my husband last night that we don't have, I'm like, there's no parties, there's no any, like normally our schedules are so stacked. And now I'm like, please just let everything I ordered online, I'm like stalking the tracking, like the Amazon tracking, the FedEx tracking, like please let it get here by Christmas Eve, please. So you are a podcaster and personal development coach.
Mm-hmm.
And you are a good one. And you have a lot of interesting things going on for yourself because you're not just a podcaster and personal development coach, you're also an entrepreneur and own a business aside from that. So you're like kind of turning into a mogul, I would say. You're like the all-encompassing entrepreneur.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess it's like the new version of it in 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like on the cutting edge. You're in the forefront. That's an amazing place to be, right?
Yeah.
So let me just jump right in and go with because to me, owning one company, let alone many, is terrifying. Like I have my own company, yes, but I still struggle with fear and all of those things. So how are you so fearless and able to just go for it?
The way one of my mottos is no reason to stay is all the reason to go. So if something is not enough for you, then that's all the reason you need to go further. And I think a lot of people are just so focused on the lack of something, like, oh, I don't have enough of this or I don't have that, rather than focusing on the pursuit to something. Because obviously if you wanted something, like if you wanted anything, you would figure out a way to get there. So that's just the switch that I would put in my mindset. So it's not that I'm without fear. I think everyone has fear, but I just don't stick around in the feelings of fear for as long as most people, because I just realize like how exciting the potential and the pursuit is.
Yeah, I like that you use the word pursuit because I think it's really what it is. And it's so, it minimalizes the fear for me when you look at it as a pursuit. Like you're pursuing it, like you know it's going to take time, you know that it's going to be like one step in front of the other, and it makes it less overwhelming. I like that word a lot. It's a way better mindset coach, personal development coach. So what do you think the landscape is like for female entrepreneurs today in 2020, going into 2021 versus entrepreneurs for men?
Mm-hmm. So I think there's this really intense quote that I've heard that says women have to work twice as hard in order to get half as much as men. And there's so many statistics that prove that to be true, where we have to work twice as hard and we might not get the same salary, we might not get the same funding opportunities. And the usual excuse is it's just always been that way because men traditionally were working and women didn't even start working until not too long ago. So it's a fair and valid point, but the idea is to recognize that because it is harder, why do we do this? Why do we try harder? And what is the potential effect of us sticking with the same standard of expectations? So if we're not getting funding, we're going to be taking an extra job and making ourselves extra busy, and then now needing to validate ourselves by being extra busy, needing at least 2 or 3 jobs, and then using all of our savings, getting into debt, and creating a whole budget to make our business succeed. And by default, because you go all in, you put all your eggs in that one basket, it has to work for you. And that's why traditionally most women-owned businesses make twice the amount of profit than male-owned businesses, because men get the funding, they don't care so much. It's not even their money. They're going to take the greater risk, which means they can get greater success faster, or face fear face failure faster as well. So understanding that context and that cycle, you can now think, okay, well, if I was going to actually think like a man and take those greater risks and actually do things that I'm not 100% capable of, is that scary or is that just normal? Because a whole half of our gender does that. So when you realize the context behind it, it's a lot easier to see the landscape and then start taking those risks and feel more confident taking those risks. And I think what's really cool about 2020 is there is no gender bias with e-commerce. No one is able to see your gender. So that is an equal playing field. Now, that's the only one positive, or a few of the many positive parts of living in the pandemic, is that we all have to work online now. So it does help equalize the playing field in that sense. And there is so much more opportunity for e-commerce specifically without that gender bias.
Yeah. I mean, my mind is like swirling because you don't realize how inefficiently the systems for funding are, for like how they're ran inefficiently. And if you're a man, they can have a crap credit score, but a good business plan and they get the fund.
Exactly.
Like it would never happen for a woman. And I think you have all these incredible opportunities with the e-commerce and the internet. Like any person that I know right now in 2020 that's in an e-commerce, in an internet type job, remote working, freelancer, they're like blowing up right now. Like the internet is like, I don't know if it's like the new economy. Like it's where you are going to thrive, I think, from here on out. It's it's always been a big part since it came into play, obviously, but I think we're going to see a lot more businesses shift to this all online perspective. And that's the only way they're going to do business anymore. Which, why wouldn't you, when you look at the fact that you have no overhead? I mean, for someone starting a business, it's alluring to say, well, I will have no overhead. I just need my laptop. I got to spend $2,000 on a really good laptop and get like the things that you need for internet and stuff, and then go forth. But I love how you mentioned the 2 to 3 jobs, because, I laugh all the time. Sometimes I'm kind of mad about it with my husband, but like he works 13-hour days. He's busy. Like I get it. He's busy, but I work 2 jobs, have all the kids stuff, have the house stuff, have this. And he like waltzes in. He's like, why are you so tired? Or if he's like, I'm so tired. I'm like, you're tired. Like
Exactly.
It's triple the amount of work for me to do what I want to do. And I'm lucky that I do have a supportive partner. I want to put that out there. He does support me and stuff, but it's like, it's so much more of a grind for me to find success in what I'm doing versus him. It's like he just says it and it's done. Within a month, he's like hit the goal, he's hit the mark, he's good to go. And I'm like, have to get creative ways to come about getting it and tap into my personal savings, or use, all of my income from, clients and pour it into other things, which is fine. I should be pouring it into my business anyway. But it's just interesting the way that women think so differently from men. And I really hope to crush the idea that it's normal for busy. I think it's important that you touched on that aspect. Like we make busy so normal, and the 2 jobs and the 3 jobs, and then we're creating more chaos for ourselves. And it's a really scary slope to be on when you're busying yourself just to be busy. And I think that's what happens. That's why a lot of women lose themselves or give up in trying to get their dream job, because it's so busy and it's so overwhelming. They get paralyzed and can't move forward or backward. They're just stuck. So it's a very important conversation. So since you're e-commerce and you do your coaching and stuff online, how did the pandemic affect you and your business specifically?
So if I look at myself last year, we were definitely a more in-person situation. So I own a line of flavored salts and sugars. And from there, I tried to increase trial by creating cocktail classes in the city here in Toronto. And during the holiday season, it was insane with holiday parties. Yeah, people wanted their team building cocktail classes. They wanted holiday parties. We were doing bartending services. So it was intense. And we had a whole staff. We had 2 venues that we were working out of. So there's a lot of people management at that time. Shifting over to e-commerce and creating virtual cocktail classes, it's been a lot easier for our staff to operate the cocktail classes, but what's been difficult is the cocktail kits, delivering that locally, or even creating bulk orders or packaging them up. And, especially with holiday now, we have to gift wrap them. So it's a whole different situation. And now we have to hire a different skill set of people that are, drivers or packers or something else. We have a storage facility now, to keep all of the materials. So the space has been incredibly different since then. But what's been crazy is the less that I put myself into it, the more success I came out of it. So I realized that once you stop taking responsibility for others, and I think that's a huge struggle with women, because you just want to do it yourself. You're just like, it's easier for me to do it myself. I don't want to delegate to you. I don't want to give you this information. So let me just figure this out and it'll be so much faster. But then how much are you valuing your own time at that time, right?
Yeah.
You're going to feel resentful. You're going to be like, oh man, now I have to take up this extra time to do this other thing because I wanted this person to do it, but you never gave them the chance. So I think the difference in switching over this time is finally getting an operations manager to really take over all of it. The difference is I had to pay her like a lot more. I'm making a lot less out of it. But even though that's happening, the salt production, we just got an order with a spirit brand to make 17,000 salts. So that's like 75K. That's like a whole human's salary that we're going to do in a couple months. So to imagine that, like, I can make a whole salary off salt means you can do anything if you put your mind to it. And realizing that all you need is to create a strong personal brand, employ the right people, and give yourself that space in order to make that success happen. Because I think if I was still in my head, I would be personally delivering all these cocktail kits. I wouldn't be able to make a sale for salts for 17,000 salts, like it wouldn't happen to me if I was still in that busy lifestyle and self-validating with needing to work really, really hard. And I think we need to stop thinking about working hard equaling success. It's not about that anymore.
I love that. Are you talking about me? Are you talking to me directly?
Right?
I had such a hard time. I got a VA this year who I've really finally released most of the stuff to do everything for me, because I struggled so bad with, well, I can do that. I can just Google it. I can watch YouTube videos. I can figure out how to do the funnel. I can figure out how to set up the sequencing, all the back end stuff of owning an online business. And really, it came down to the fact that I was able to see, I'm not perfect at it, but at least I recognize now that when I do that, I'm costing myself money, because I'm doing a $10 an hour job instead of going out and selling 17,000 salts for $75,000. Like, I'm busying myself with a $10 an hour job, which there's nothing wrong with a $10 an hour job if that's what you want to do. But when you're trying to scale and grow and you're taking everything on as your responsibility, it's like having a baby, a business. I think I can relate it to having a child, because I care so much about it. I'm so passionate about my business that it's so hard to let go of the control over to someone else. So you said something really important that I want to dig deeper into. You said it's about having the right people and the right staff to be able to work and that you trust to take over for you, so you can go out and do the things that you want to be doing and that you're good at, right? Like selling and getting the deals. How would if people listening to the show right now, women entrepreneurs, if you were to say, what is your best advice for finding the people to work for you?
So I really believe in visualization. So I thought of who would Amanda 2.0 be? Someone that equally cares about this business, someone that believes in woman empowerment, someone that really wants to change the industry. These are these qualities that I want that are better than me 2.0. And after I created that visualization, I got Amanda 5.0, like someone just unbelievable. She had 15 years of experience. She's been doing so many women empowerment campaigns. I love that we're both women-owned businesses and entrepreneurs that focus on getting more female representation in the hospitality space and specifically in the alcohol space. Yeah. So she's just been a huge advocate for that. And I'm just like, beyond, I just don't even know how to deal with how impressive she is. And she's an operations person by trade. So all of the logistics that I was struggling through, just driving myself around delivering kits, like she has all of it figured out. She created a cocktail program of like 15 cocktail kits when I was struggling for like one a week, you know?
Wow.
So it's very different once you get the people that are actually skilled in what they should be. And you don't have to do it all by yourself. You don't have to learn everything so that you can delegate. There's things that you won't know, obviously, in the world. And once you accept that, I think, and visualize, like, what's your exit plan? Who do you want to take over? It could maybe even be like anti-Amanda, you know, it could be like the direct opposite, because maybe I was being toxic for my company, which is also a problem, right? But what I wanted was someone better than me. And I wanted like someone with the same types of values. So once you visualize that, it's very easy to then know who to interview and what you're looking for.
It's incredible. That is the most, by the way, confident sentence I think I've heard a woman say in a really long time, that you wanted someone better than you for the job for
Yes.
your company, because you're confident enough in yourself to recognize that you need someone who will empower you by being so skilled at what they're doing in their skill set for you, and that it's like going to take you to a whole new level. I think a lot of people would be so intimidated by that sentence, that you're looking for someone better than you. I mean, that's a big sentence right there. And ultimate confidence, I mean, that's just exudes it. So totally understand the female empowerment movement. And it's exactly what I'm trying to convey to everyone that tunes into the show. Like, if we empowered one another as women, like, it's not about making you diminish yourself. Like, it's empowering someone else and accepting that some people have skills in this field and you have skills in this field. But if you come together and lift each other up, you sell the $17,000 salts. I mean, it's that simple. That's what happens, right?
Yeah.
17,000 salts. Sorry, for $75,000. Corrected myself.
I think everyone wants to feel like they're capable, especially women, like, oh, I can do this, I can do that. Yes, you can. It's going to take you longer to do some things and shorter times to do other things, because everyone's just built differently.
Right.
So once I realized, like, cool, I have this business, I've created it around this thing, but I don't have the right skill set to do this because I'm new and I started the company. I'm great with the salts, but I'm not great with a cocktail program and the hospitality space and customer service and, you know, delivering things. There were just so many additional new things with COVID and the new demand for things that I was like, okay, this is way beyond my skill set. It's like, I need someone better than me. And then I realized, you know what I really am good at? I'm good at conversations. I'm good at interviews. Like, let me lean into that. Let me lean into a coaching program. And that spun out so quick that once you know what you're naturally good at and you lean into that, instead of forcing yourself to get better at like topics that you think mean success, like accounting or, you know, business sense or marketing, you know, whatever social media that people think is important. Once you just let go of that and literally give it to someone that is better than you, you will both succeed. Like, collaboration, I think, is key for success. Ultimately, it's not about competition. It's not about you. It's not about beating the competition.
Yeah. I love that. So you do mindset coaching. You've moved into the personal development coaching arena on top of your other, you know, because now you have time to, because you recognize what you're good at. So what is the one thing that most of your clients come to you and like for advice for?
So a lot of what they're looking for is that push. You know, I'm that person that's going to kick you in the ass and say, why aren't you doing your thing? You said that you wanted to do this thing. You keep saying that you want to do this thing. What's stopping you from doing it? And usually it's fear of failure in some way. And we'll talk about the worst case scenario. Okay, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Like, you're going to lose all your money. This is going to happen. You're going to feel like a fool. Maybe you'll feel stupid about it. It's all about your feelings of the unknown. And then we would talk about, well, how would you feel if you actually did it? You came to me finally next week and said, Amanda, I did it. How would you feel about that? Like, immense feelings of success. Even if you didn't even make a dime out of it, it's the fact that you did it that you would feel great about. And then this is the biggest part, is the cost of inaction. I think the cost of inaction of actually not doing it. How many weeks would you go on feeling lackluster that you didn't fulfill a thing that you really wanted to do? How would you feel months from now? How would you feel years from now? Other people have now started that thing. Like, if I never started a salt company, years from now, maybe someone does, you know,
Yeah.
maybe someone else would be in this other space and I'd be watching this person grow on social media and being like, oh man, like that person took my idea. I would feel so resentful. And I think that's the biggest thing. No one wants to feel regret. And
Right.
once you implement that idea, it's like, if you show up to me next week with more regret, you're going to keep going on the same train, you know? So you need to change your feelings about yourself and what you think the unknown is, and actually start going through that pursuit. And I think it's really that push and that straightforwardness. I'm literally going to call you out and say, okay, this is, you know, negative behavior for yourself. You know, it's of a disinterest to you and your business. And I thought that this would be complicated because not a lot of people like being told what to do or just being told that they need to just do it, you know? But I think people appreciate that because it comes from like, I see you at this standard. I believe that you are bigger than what you're telling me you are. So you just need to meet me there.
Yeah.
You know? And I think it's really encouraging, really tough on this at the same time. But I think it's a different version of tough love where it's like, I see how high you can be. So meet me there. And then let's see what the real magic is. You know, that's when magic begins after you overcome that.
Yeah. It's pushing through those upper limits and meeting the coach where, you know, in that higher level. And I think that's incredible because people can't see, women especially cannot see their value. I have found in my own coaching as a confidence coach, they have no idea how awesome they are. Like,
Yeah.
And I'm no different than any other woman. Like I'll sit and knock myself down all day long, but like we really don't see our potential or how great we are. We're always looking at the flaws and the weaknesses or perceived weaknesses. So having, you know, someone like you say, nope, I'm going to meet you here because this is where you can be. And regret is the biggest, you know, the biggest contender in all of what I do with mindset coaching, because do you want to live with regret? Do you want someone else to take your idea and run with it? And then you're left like, God, you know, that could have been me. I hate, like, that's the worst thing for me. That could have been me. If it could have been me and I tried and it didn't work out, I'm okay with whoever finds that the end game with it. But if I didn't even try, I mean, it should have been me then.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know? So you're host of the Amanda Chen Show podcast on all the podcast places, right? It's on Apple Podcasts. And you work with women, you're women empowerment, you believe you're women-owned business, women-led businesses, you coach women, but I'm like so interested with the fact that you are interviewing 100 men for your podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, what a concept. So can you tell me, like, what is it that what are you interviewing them for? And what are you learning from doing it?
Yeah. So I've always been a huge advocate for women empowerment. I've led a lot of workshops here in Toronto, and I feel like I hit a ceiling. Like I've found great community there with like-minded people. I found a family there. I was able to help other people grow. But you know, the concept of like, stop trying to get a seat at the table, just make your own table, get your own seats.
Yeah.
That's great. But then now everyone's got their own table and their own seats. And then everyone's just talking about themselves and their own isolated tables. And they're not being able to understand other people. And I think we've been spending so much time in women empowerment groups to explain ourselves, to get our stories told, and to get a community of similar minded people to agree with that. But that's all you have. Other like-minded people that agree with you. And I don't need more like-minded women in my circle. They all get it. And I don't think women need to get stronger. You know, I think that concept of the strong female lead needs to stop because we've already been strong. We don't really need to get stronger and gain more confidence and more this or more that and to be like men. What we need is improvement in our relationships with men. And we can't get there until we start talking to men. And I've been guilty of this. I didn't make it a safe space. You know, I would just instantly talk over men if they ever tried to talk to me about, you know, women's issues in any way. You know, just like you said before, it's like, oh, why are you tired? Let me explain to you why I'm tired. You know, you immediately want to talk about your story. And I realized, oh, well, I'm not helping the situation. So I started this series called 100 Masked Men, where I'm going to anonymously interview men about their perceptions of masculinity, their sexuality, their relationships with women, specifically with partners and their mothers, to understand where the fear is. And I think there's a lot of fear in not saying the right thing, in like women judging them in a different way. And a lot of the themes I've noticed is, even though they're anonymous and even though this is a judgment-free zone, they're still lying to me. Like, it takes a while for them to slowly unpack. And the only way they will is if I reveal a story, if I lead with vulnerability. Okay. Well, then they follow and talk about themselves. So it's been a crazy learning experience. But what I hope to do is, you know, I think we've all experienced some kind of toxic person in our life that's like at the end of the spectrum. And I think this is the biggest healing for me, where like, I don't want to help that guy. This guy did so much wrong to me. Like, I spent my entire life trying to build my own platform and a voice for myself. And here I am voluntarily giving that platform and a voice to these guys. It was very humbling to make that decision. And it's been insane to see how much supportive feedback I've got from men saying, you know, thank you for giving me the space to ask these questions, because I never felt like I was allowed to. And now I kind of get a better understanding of where women are coming from, because I never saw it that way. All I was thinking about was myself and like, how come you women won't understand me? And it's like, yeah, I was in the same boat. So this is like version 2, you know, where we're leveling up from our own understanding to now a collaboration. And I think that's been like my whole key for this year, just collaboration.
Yeah. And I think collaboration is really important moving forward for women and women's rights and equality. It is about collaboration. It's not one gender being better than the other or mm-hmm. receiving more than the other. If we collaborated together, what a powerful place that would be, right? If we release the stigma and the intimidation and the talking over and really work to understand one another. Mm-hmm. So what do you think are men's, what's one common theme that they've all sort of touched on with you?
Their issue with how to approach women about their intentions. I think they've been trained that they have to slowly gain her trust, you know, through a period of time. And they'll do like a subtle approach and do the friendly friend zone situation, or they'll be an aggressive, like, hey, this is what I want kind of thing, or, you know, act very alpha. And it's always like, who do I got to be to get her? And okay. Why do you have to be somebody to get her? Why can't you just be yourself? And so many times they're like, oh, well, she won't like that. Like, we don't know if she'll like that. I'm like, well, that's how you should begin everything. And it makes me think, is that what they do all the time when they walk into a room? Do they be somebody that they're not? You know, do they wear clothes that they're not supposed to be and say things that they don't mean? And then how many months along the way, when you finally start revealing yourself, are people just surprised and taken aback? And then this further validates your point that no one's going to like the real you. So you continue on with that facade over and over again and repeat the cycle. And when I see that, I'm like, man, we all do that too. Like, women do that all the time, because we try to be somebody. We want to impress people on the first thing. And it's all about that interview process, about, you know, nailing that pitch, closing the sale, whatever it is, that we've been so trained to not be ourselves. And being ourselves has been the scariest thing, I think, for anyone. And especially when we're trying to be our own entrepreneur, work for ourselves, do something that's truly authentic to ourselves, it feels so unnatural suddenly, when it's always been what we were supposed to do in the beginning.
Yeah. That's a lot, because I think women, we go into things the exact same way. Like, how many women do you know? But we take it further to like, men only want the physical aspect, which as I get older, I recognize men for the most part, but I have to be attracted to someone too, you know? Mm-hmm. So, but women it's always, God, if I am going to I can't talk to him. I need to lose 10 pounds before I even approach him. Or, you know, my boobs are too little, or, you know, he's going to look at someone who's more voluptuous than me and be totally like, look at me and push me aside. And so creating these facades and different characters that we play to be accepted. It's interesting to hear that men have the same kind of fear. And approaching a woman is scary, and there probably are a ton of mixed messages with it for them. It's got to be confusing. I mean, we all are different, right? Just like all men are different. They're all not lumped into one thing, but it has to be intimidating, especially in today's world where women are really like working too hard to get the equality. Like it's,
Yes.
really working too hard, and they're not willing to collaborate. A lot of women are not willing to collaborate. There are a lot of women out there who it's our time, screw, like pushing out, but it's not about phasing out or pushing your way through. It's really about understanding how to get a better way to collaborate together and create a better workforce, a better, whatever it is you're looking for.
Yeah, I think we've been conditioned to believe that we got to be the best. And if we don't, then someone else is going to take our place. And we need to realize that you have your own place. You're always going to have your own place. It just won't be what you think it's going to be, because we've only seen the same success stories from the same types of people. So you think like you have to be that person. You have to have this perfect life in order to mean success. Whereas once you just change that definition, you're already successful, if you think of it that way.
Definitely. So have you learned anything about yourself interviewing these guys, like with the vulnerability, like noticing that when you lead the way, or what have you learned about yourself? I'm curious, because that's a lot of men to talk. I mean, that's a lot of in-depth conversation with the enemy, or, the hero, whichever way you want to look at it.
Mm-hmm. So I realized that I think this might be more of my language, but when I say that I think we've done enough self-work, like women have the luxury of being able to talk to each other about emotions and feelings, and men were never brought up that way. As boys, they always had to be tough. They never had that opportunity. So I can see that they're lacking. They just haven't flexed that muscle in the same capacity. But then I think what I realize is how much anger and resentment I got from men's feelings of rejection. Like they're just so afraid of rejection because they put up a woman in this high idealized pedestal, and any way that she might disapprove of his behavior is just soul crushing, and it took me a while to put myself in their position to understand where they're coming from, because I was like, so what? As if you men are not mean to us, like,
Right.
But then I realized, what? Women are mean to ourselves. Like we do this to ourselves by thinking we need to lose 5 pounds before we even speak to somebody, that we need to do this, that we need like a jam-packed resume before we apply for this. And yeah, we do that to ourselves. Yeah, there's the whole patriarchy that contributed to that situation, but we're still contributing to it too, if that's what we believe. So the only way to move past that is to stop believing that, stop believing that you have something of a weakness or that you're a victim from something. And once I realized, okay, this isn't about me trying to change people's perspectives. It's not about trying to get them to understand where I'm coming from. It's about us both coming together and figuring out where that mess is, where the collaboration can work out. Then we can actually get to some real growth together. And I think once they realize like, oh, adult women are looking for just a partnership. They're not looking for you to do everything for them. And then same thing with women today. It's like, you don't need to do everything for your man. Like you don't need to be the everything. And once you realize that like you by yourself is enough in all facets of that, you're not going to be the Saturday girl or the Wednesday girl. Like you are in totality who you are, and you will find the same people that will appreciate you for all that you are. And I think what's been very interesting is the guys that have agreed to be on the conversation with me and the guys that have not, and it shows me that like, wow, you're unwilling to speak openly with me, even anonymously without judgment. Then you seriously have some issues with your ego and concept of what you think is going to happen, because the whole point of the show is to provide additional perspectives so that the audience can finally make their own educated decisions, that we don't have to listen to whatever Hollywood is telling us or what the traditional media formats are telling us, that this is finally a space for real conversations and you don't want to be a part of it. It's very disappointing to see.
Yeah, well, the fragile.
Yes,
too
exactly.
too fragile on the inside to even contemplate the idea of being open to come and do
Yeah.
it. I um first of all, I love all of it. I love it. Like I love the whole concept. I am like, because my husband and I know I keep bringing him up, but like he's my real, like I learn so much from him. And it's so funny because we have done a lot of work on masculine energy and feminine energy
Hmm.
within our marriage. And I learned, I'm in a mastermind group with Ryan Yakomi and Chris Britton, and they're married and Canadian. They have two really successful podcasts and they're great coaches and stuff. And they talk all the time and really, really coach on masculine and feminine energy. And what's funny is the way that I run my business and things is very masculine.
Hmm.
My husband is more successful in his feminine. And when he's in the feminine flow, he accelerates with his abundance and prosperity and where he's going in his career. And I'm like the rigid, like ball buster, masculine energy in my work. But what the trick is to find the polarity and always be in polarity with one another. So like when I'm done with my day, I have to like work to get myself into the feminine flow, and he switches into the masculine flow so that there's this always this polarity between us. And that is where I've learned more about myself and about him, because I think as women, when you hear people hear masculine energy, feminine energy, and they immediately associate it to gender. Like it's
Of
instant.
course.
You see man, you see woman, right? And when you recognize it, it has nothing to do with that. And we all have those energies within us. Um, and some men are forced to suit up in a masculine energy from a very young age, and they're in fact they're very a feminine energy in essence inside of them. They go, they want to have fun, they're energetic, they go with the flow, they like to be spontaneous and silly, like, and that's okay. But the fear of being like accepting that, oh, I do better in like the feminine flow or whatever, because my husband still has trouble when we talk about it, and I'm like, but you like do so much better when you're not forcing the masculine to come out, especially at your job. um so it's been an interesting ride, like learning all of that and how fragile. And I'll tell you, I didn't realize how sensitive men were until my friends started having little boys, right? Like, so you
Mm.
see, and my friend, it was like 5 years ago, she has like a 12-year-old, and she's like, he cries 10 times more than my daughter did. Like, she had an older daughter, and she's like, I can't believe how sensitive he is. Like, he is so much more sensitive. And it's like eye-opening when you're raising little men and allowing them to cry and to be able to say that it's okay to be sensitive and feel things, because they don't get that opportunity very often. And Hollywood has put a very big image in our minds of, you have to be the knight in shining armor, you have to be strong and a rock. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to collaborate with, either in my personal life in a relationship or in a business setting, with a rock, like someone who's just,
It's a boulder,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're hitting a wall every time. It's like, man, what's the point?
Exactly, exactly. Oh God, that's such good stuff. So I'm just looking over, like, where do you think our feelings of self-worth come from in all of this journey
So
of life?
I know self-worth is tough. I think we put our self-worth in everything that we do and everything that happens to us. And I don't think we realize how much our responses from other people affect our self-worth. Because if you just cared about yourself, which you should, in your own self-worth, you should be happy with whatever you put out. If you spent 2 hours on something or you spent 200 hours on something, it shouldn't matter. It should just be what your best version of that is. And then you realize after that, you're like, oh, cool. I learned something about myself. I'm really good at that. Not so good at that. I don't enjoy this. I am good at it, maybe, but I don't like it, whatever it is. And it should just be self-satisfying in that sense. But I think what we do is we create this thing. And again, if you think about little boys and children back then, you'll make a piece of art and then you'll show it to your parents and you'll be like, look, I drew something for you. it's about that satisfaction, about that that response. And if they're like, oh, what is that? Because they can't tell what it is. And you're like, it's a whale. Can't you see? And then, you know, like you need to prove yourself all of a sudden to explain what that is. And then if you don't get the immediate first reaction of like, oh, that's amazing, congrats, whatever, then you're going to keep trying over and over and over again to validate yourself. And then if you don't get it, you're going to start building this resentment. So I think, and once you do that, you're going to realize like, oh, I'm not worthy of love, or I'm not worthy of, you know, affection, or I'm not worthy to deserve success, you know? And I think that's when you start to realize how much other people's thoughts of you matter so much. Like once you stop caring so much about what everyone else thinks, you will find the people that will accept you, and they might not be anyone that you are currently interacting with, but you have to go through that journey in order to finally give yourself that worth, you know, find your circle instead of just forming yourself within what you've given. And women are so used to just taking what's been given. I think of this as like a buffet at work, you know, when someone's like, oh, there's a happy hour at work and there's a buffet, and you're like, oh, let me just finish these like 12 emails and this PowerPoint and these 5 phone calls, and then I'll go there, you know, and busy yourself. You go there and there's nothing left at the buffet. There's like 2 pieces of something, and you'll take the 2 spring rolls and be like, oh, they were kind of cold, but they were fine. What if you were there at the beginning and you had your full choice of everything at the buffet table? You know, what if you actually gave yourself everything that you deserve? What could you choose, right? You could choose any cuisine. There's a whole buffet table of all the things. You don't even know how to deal with choice because you've never been given it. And you gave yourself that own lack by choosing to do other people's things, what you thought was supposed to validate yourself, and then you missed out on the whole buffet. So
it's powerful. Why do you think it's just coming from like looking at, you know, the drawing? Let's go back to because my daughter is 5.
Yeah.
And she draws and writes a lot of things that I have no idea what it is.
Exactly.
And I work very hard to be like, that's incredible. Why don't you tell me what inspired you to draw this picture so I can get her to like at least give me some area of what's in the picture. And you do see it like just you know, when you validate like the drawing or the thing that she worked so hard on, and it's like soul crushing when you see her break when she doesn't feel validated. But I recognize that that's obviously an important part of all of our journeys. Like you have to be able to take some criticism from people or not be validated for everything. But I really struggled with people pleasing, especially for my parents. And, you know, I think we're conditioned. It's not just, it's like, we have the choice, right? So be there at the beginning, get everything. You can choose what you want. But when you're conditioned growing up in society where like you need your teacher's approval because you need to get an A, you need your parents' approval because you need to be a good girl, you need to get into college, you have to go and do all these things. And for a long time, I really have always felt like, well, why? What is the point? Why do I have to get all A's if I think that this class is lame and I don't want to study what they're teaching me? I mean, obviously I want to be educated, but like, I just think it's so hard for women to understand that their worth is not tied in any external validation. Like it all comes from within. And I have a struggle even just figuring out how to like convey that with other women that I'm working with so that they learn it on their own, in their own kind of, in their own perception of how that works for them within residing inside of them. But do you find that like, you know, if you just tell people like, well, it's a choice, just go and choose, you know, like they just are like, okay, well, that's not happening because I care so much what my coworkers think of me or my boss or whatever, you know. What do you think that is something that you share with people or your clients to empower them to really like, you value yourself clearly. You've worked hard on valuing yourself and getting in alignment with who you are and being authentic to that, to yourself. What is one thing at the beginning with a client who's stuck and just comes to you feeling worthless? What is one little nugget that you give them of hope to that they too can feel the way that you feel about yourself?
That's really hard because I think you need to give yourself that time. And a lot of people are like, oh, there's no way I'm just gonna like meditate for 20 minutes and start not thinking. Like I can't just switch it off. Like my life is so busy, I have all these things. And this is when you realize that you're validating yourself and your self-worth based on doing the work versus the work itself. If the work itself is just to have awareness and love yourself better, then that's the work. It's not doing the work. It's not clocking hours. It's not adding up all of these things to validate yourself and your self-worth. So once you get away from the doing and into just the work and what the work means in a more universal, grander scale, then it will open your mind and you'll get a better understanding of yourself and what matters to you. And I think when you brought up that childhood issue, I think there was this one study, and they've done this a lot of times with school children, where one half of the room, they'll send this like mini test for everyone to complete. One half of the room, the people will congratulate all the kids and say, you're so smart, you did such great work, and congratulate them for it. On the other side, they wouldn't say any of that. They would say, it looks like you worked really hard on that. There were no grades, there was no A's or stars or anything. They just said you did really, looks like you spent a lot of time and a lot of effort on it. As a test, they gave in like an impossible quiz. Like there was no answer for the test. And on the ones that were congratulated for being smart or doing anything really easily or quickly, immediately quit. They were like, this is impossible to do. We don't want to do it. The other group just kept trying and actually felt okay at the fact that they just kept trying. And it was an impossible task and it didn't matter because they've been congratulated for just the work. So, and they tried this over and over and over again with different classrooms. They were like, oh, this can't be consistent all around, but it was. And we need to stop telling our kids like, oh, you're so smart, or you're so pretty, or you're so great, or whatever, because why are they so smart? Where did that come from?
Yeah.
It needs to be, oh, you put so much effort in this drawing. Please explain what was in that drawing. Wow, you spent a whole hour on that. What did you learn from that?
Yeah.
Then it has nothing to do with the picture anymore. You don't need to know what the item was. You just need to know about their effort and why they did what they did. And then the more that they can start expressing that, it's a whole different learning style for sure. But it's a total flip of how we've normally been conditioned to congratulate people and appreciate what work is and, good grades and what success even is supposed to mean.
Yeah. Cause I struggled with math.
Yeah.
Not a numbers person. I can put that out there wholeheartedly. Struggled with math. I had to go to summer school one year in high school because I just could not, the teacher and I spoke two totally different languages, and it was geometry, and I just couldn't, I had been okay with algebra and whatever. I couldn't wrap my mind around the concepts, and I wasn't being shown a way that would help my mind because I thought differently about it, and I was not parallel with what was happening. So my parents always commented like, you can, just keep trying, you can do better, keep trying, keep working at it. And then I go to summer school and I got an A, like literally went from like a D the whole year. So a whole school year, trying, going to the clinics, going to the this, going to the that. And it's like, because I think my parents did keep validating the fact that I was working so hard and you're trying, and they weren't getting frustrated with me. Like my dad is a math person, but he never sat there and was like, what's wrong with you? It's so easy. Like,
Exactly.
with 90-degree angle, like, but he really pushed the trying, keep putting effort in, and you will see a reward from it eventually. And then I go into summer school and like crush it, and come to find out I was trying really hard, but it had been the language of the teacher. Like I go to another teacher and the way her language, I just was like, oh, this is like, I got this. And I had worked so hard to understand it on my own terms that has always been one of the strongest lessons for me on how I parent, because I'm not a parent that crushes on my 15-year-old for grades. I'm like, whatever, your grades are your grades. You're going to answer to your teachers. As long as you're trying your hardest and you know that you're putting maximum effort into what you're doing, then you're going to be successful. And no A or B minus in an AP class is going to make or break you. If you're giving it your all, you're giving it your all. And I think that that validates my kids in a different way. And I'm not a perfect parent. I should preface with that. But I do want my girls to have a different concept of who they are than the way that I had a concept of myself, because my stuff was all, I needed external validation for everything. I thought I was worthless because of, you know, my weight, my image. It was all vanity stuff. It really had nothing to do with me as a person. And so it's been very important for me to teach my kids that, like, you are more than a pretty face. Like, yes, I think you both are so beautiful. You're the most beautiful kids I've ever seen, because, you know, but you are so much more than that as a girl, as a turning into a young woman, turning into a woman. There's so much more to you than a body. And if your highlights are on point and how perfect your face looks.
Yeah.
And to like go forward and like choose that. Choose who you are. Choose leaning into who you are instead of leaning into trying to be the coolest and look the coolest, you know?
Yeah.
Which is not easy for teenagers.
I know we seek that familiarity, right? We want to fit in. We want to be a part of the group. So it is very brave to go away from that. But I think how you want to shift that language is that you just need to find your group.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the one that has been given to you. And it's not what you see on TV. It's not that projection. And if you go through that journey, it'll be super fulfilling because then you decided it. It wasn't decided for you. Whereas I think, like you and I, we've been born with everything decided for us. You know,
Yeah.
This was the path. You have to look this way. This is what success means. And then you strive for it and you're just like, why am I doing this? This is so stupid. Like, I don't see the value, you know, and then, but then if you don't do it, then you're an outsider and you don't want to be, you know, weird or, you know, kind of left out from everything. So yeah, it was a huge struggle for us. And I hope it's going to be different, you know, with the youth today.
Yeah, I would hope so too. Is there any difference, do you look at women empowerment, and this is like a loaded question, I realize, so if you don't want to answer it, I can edit this out, but like, do you think that there's a difference or a different obstacle that women of color, Asian women, Black women, Indian women, like do you think there's a difference? No. Do you think that we should separate as women our ethnicities and which has the bigger obstacle, or recognize it and come together and face it all together as one gender?
So there's a couple aspects to that. So in the woman versus men concept of, you know, women having to work twice as hard for half of what men have, yes, that's been traditionally all around in a gender scale. In terms of women of color versus just white women, there is a sense of privilege. And I think it's the same idea as if you were going to go to a new school and no one knows you there, and you're again trying to fit in. And then at your attempt to fit in, you also feel like you don't belong there. So that's going to generate a whole different can of worms on your feelings of self-worth and like, should you be here? Should you even exist in the world? You know, and that's what women of color struggle with, I think. And a lot of us don't notice that. And we just try to group ourselves in being woman all around. And it's like, yeah, you are, but there is this other category that makes you specific. And I think what I tried to do is ignore that. I tried to just like grow up being a white woman. You know, I just wanted to be like everybody else. I didn't want to associate anything about my culture. And then I realized how much I was lacking because it's like so obvious, you know, it's how I look. And I didn't know how to respond when people wanted to ask me about that. So I think I've now started to find that, you know, and start to get a little bit more of an understanding of my own background and start talking to my family a little bit more to get that understanding. Because at the end of the day, it's just the same as improving your relationship with your parents, you know,
Yeah.
and where did they come from and what was their background like and what were their parents like, so that you'll have some greater understanding of you as a human. So I think anyone's cultural background is super important. And the worst thing that you can do as a woman of color is to ignore that and, you know, try to pretend that that's not you, or like, again, like we were talking about this whole time about, you know, putting on different masks and trying to be something that you're not.
Yeah.
that is, you know, intrinsically part of you.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for answering that. Because obviously with the BLM movement and everything here in the States that's been happening, it's been really eye-opening to me because I didn't always believe or understand the privilege, I think, that I held being a white woman in America. Like I didn't get it until, I am embarrassed to say it, but really until this whole movement has shined so much light on what the privilege is and what the differences are. And I always embrace all people for, you know, like who they are. And I don't see color. And, but I also don't want to not see color. It's such a fine line for a white woman, honestly, because it's like, I don't want to talk about it, but I do want to talk about it. And then I'm like, but that's why there's all this stigma and all these issues with it.
Yeah.
Because
yeah. Go ahead.
oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, like that's what I mean. I think that's totally valid to feel because, you know, as a woman of color, I didn't allow that space for that conversation to happen. You know, I tried to pretend like I didn't have an ethnicity, you know? So, and I'm definitely not the only one that acts like that. Like a lot of women of color pretended to be white women too. And we would all just join in on the woman movement, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but there's all these other layers, and then you ignoring it makes it harder for other people that don't have that situation to talk about it. So just like I was already doing that with the woman versus men situation, I was also doing that on a racial scale. So it's totally understanding that you feel that way because no one's talked about it ever until now.
Yeah. And for me, I just, an episode that'll air before this one, I went on and talked about like lonely, like if you're lonely or if you feel lost and you don't know who you are, it's like this whole episode, but I love to travel. I found myself, I was a flight attendant, like in my early days. And there was nothing more incredible than learning. Like I still love to travel when it opens up. I can't wait to get out and adventure the world again because you learn so much about yourself when you're amongst other cultures and other places and countries that do things differently than you. And I used it as a anecdote to finding yourself. Like go travel without your spouse, without your friends, like go someplace by yourself and really, so, you know, explore. And then that's how you find out, to me, one of the fastest ways I found out who I was through traveling alone. And obviously safely. But it's, I think the conversations are important. And I think that accepting and embracing your culture is so important. You know, I think that it is overlooked often. And there is that aspect of I'm just going to be this person because that's the easiest way for things to go right now, or I feel most validated in that circle. But, you know, I think it's brave, you know, for anybody to start embracing their culture and like learn about their history and their family history, because that is where you come from. You know, we all have these ancestors, you know, I believe in ancestors that they're around me, that they're with me, that I can break ancestral, you know, trauma and chains and all that stuff. And you can't do that if you don't embrace who you are.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, it's very huge. So thank you very much for sharing that with me. Yeah, I think that the landscape for women entrepreneurs is growing. Would you say that 2021 might be a really big year for women just taking over, like e-commerce, and gender's going to get crushed in that regard?
So I think women are just going to keep plowing through as they always have been. But I think that hopefully there's going to be a shift with men in their understanding and their participation in the movement. I think before it's always been this passive, like, oh, I'm just not going to say anything. We're just going to stand here by the side. I'm not going to agree or disagree because I don't know how to input my own voice here. So, you know, I'm just going to passively stand by, but then you're not really helping move anything or, you know, implement change. And I think men are hopefully going to start being a more active role in a women's empowerment movement in 2021.
Love it. Well, with that, I will wrap things up. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really, truly, I appreciate it. You just are, you are such a badass. Like, it's so incredible to like hear all the cool stuff that you do and how you like are really just pushing I love anyone that wants to empower other women and step in and be there and like lift women up. I think it's incredible. And you certainly are definitely going to be one of those it people that people are hearing about in 2021, I'm sure, on all of the media places. So I appreciate you coming here very much. And where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Yep. My website is missamandachen.com. Also, my podcast is Miss Amanda Chen, the show. And you can contact me on Instagram, also at Miss Amanda Chen. So everything is
Miss
pretty
Amanda Chen.
branded. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I look forward to connecting sometime in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Desperately Seeking Self podcast. Did you love this episode? Then head on over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Also check out innovativecoachbrooke.com to join in on the conversation, access show notes, and discover all the awesome free content. And don't forget to join us next week for another episode. Thanks for tuning in.